Okay, good evening. Today is Daf Tzadik Hay, and we're in the sugya of the shulchan and the lechem. How lechem was, and we're going to be discussing it for a little while. But anyway, today's daf, we're beginning on a few lines down, Iboilahu, about 6 lines down on Tzadik Hay, 7 lines down. Iboilahu, lechem apanim nifsal b'masois, oy eina nifsal b'masois. In other words, we know that lechem apanim would leave the azara, the heichel, adra, it's in the heichel, and leaves the azara, you'd have a psul of yaitza. So what happens when they would travel? And Pashtus, the Gemara is talking about when the shulchan, the breads were on the shulchan, the lechem panim were on the shulchan, and now you're traveling. Is there psul yaitza or not? So is it nifsal b'masais or not? Rabbi Yochanan Rishua ben Levi, and Machloikis ben Rabbi Yochanan Rishua ben Levi. Chad Omar nifsal. One says it's puzzle. The Chad Omar ain't a nifsal. We don't know who says what, but one says it's puzzle, one says it's not puzzle. Manda Omar nifsal. Dichsiv kasha yachanu ken yiso. Just as they camp, so they traveled. Ma'bachaniyasa nifsal b'yaitza. Just like when they travel, when they encamp, you have a psul yaitza. It's so too when they traveled, nifsal b'yaitza.
They took apart the Mishkan, right?
What?
They took apart the Mishkan, right?
They took down the Mishkan, right?
They took down the curtains.
Right.
Now, you tell me the fighting is vast, they lit also?
What?
The fighting is vast.
Yeah, they capped it. They had a cap on top of it. Yeah, they had a cap on top of it.
The bread stayed hot and we're on there too, I guess.
Staying hot is a nest that happened.
I mean, the bread stayed.
The bread, right now, the bread is on there. Hot, irrelevant, not.
Sorry, I meant
Yeah, on the thing, on the thing, not. So now, man da'ama eina nifsal dichsiv v'lechem hatamid alav yiyeh. It should be on it all the time. So in other words, if it's on it all the time, as long as it's on it, even if it's transported, right? As long as it's transported, we don't care. We don't care because it's on. The lechem is on. So what we have, Amandiyam is saying that kashayachnu ken yiso, and Amandiyam is saying the lechem hatamid aliyatam. Now, so what are we going to do? What does each Mandiyama do with what? Again, this is a class. This is repeating itself constantly throughout this Masechta. When you have Machloikas with Psukim, what does the other one do with the Psukim? Okay. The Idach Nami, the one who says that it's not puzzle, Haksiv Kasha Yachnu Ken Yiso. So what did he do with the pasuk of the one who says it's puzzle? That makes it puzzle. Kasha Yachnu Ken Yiso. See, he says Le'idach Kisa. It's a proof. It's not a raya that it's puzzle. The pasuk of kashayachnu kan yiso is a proof. Ma b'chniyasa kliyayatsa mimakomo loy nifsal. Just like when you're encamped, as long as it doesn't leave the shulchan, it's like puzzle. Af b'nisiyasa kliyayatsa mimakomo loy nifsal. So therefore, in other words, what you bring is a raya that it's puzzle. I bring as a raya that it's kasha. V'idach nami, and the one who says it's puzzle, haksiv alechem atamid alav yiyeh. Now, what are you going to do with that? That's mashma. As long as it's on the shulchan, you're good. What are you going to do with that? Says Ella, you're right. That's not the machlokes. Ella, you're right. That's not the machlokes. Ella ki asa Rav Dimi, when he came up from Eretz Yisrael, Amar b'misuder, when it's on the shulchan, kuli alma loy pligi. No one disagrees. When it's on the shulchan, no one, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi, no one's disagreeing that you would not be a psul yaitza as long as it's on the shulchan. Elaki pligi, when are they arguing? B'mesulak, when it's taken off. Man da'ama nifsal d'chsiv kashayachnu ken yiso. Ba'man chiyasai nifsal b'yaitza, when it's off the shulchan, you have a psul yaitza. Af menasiyasai nifsal b'yaitza. In other words, the fact that you are traveling and it's off the shulchan, so it's not in the Almayid anymore. It's not in the Almayid. So therefore, obviously, it is Psul Yaitza. Again, the whole saving grace is when it's what on the Shulchan. It's not on the Shulchan. It's not in the Almayid. Why? Because the Almayid was broken down, right? The Almayid was broken down, and since the Almayid was broken down, we have it's out. Lemanda me'eina nifsal, but the one who says eina nifsal, it's not puzzle. Dichsiv V'nasa oil moyed. It says v'nasa oil moyed. I think it's. Let me make sure to get the right pasuk. Vinasa, okay, good. Okay, Vinasa, it says Vinasa oil moyed. And listen to this, fellas. Afa pisha nasa, even though it's traveling, oil moyed hu. Even though it's traveling, it's still considered the oil moyed. So it's on the move, but it never left. It's on the move, but it never left. It stays. And again, it's we will view the oil moyed as being intact. We'll view the oil moyed as being intact. So, l'chayru, what are we speaking about over here? Ma'idach nami aksiv kashayach can you sow? L'idach gisa ma bechniyasay kiloi mafik lei loy nifsol. Ap nisiyasay kiloi mafik lei. As long as you don't take it out. In other words, it's off the shulchan. It's off the shulchan, but loy mafik. I didn't take it out of the oil moed. In other words, since the oil moed is intact, it's not leaving. I have a moving oil moed. I have a moving oil moed. So good, it's not in the shulchan anymore. But just what? What? Oh, okay. So now. So, because why did they take it off? Because they're going to eat it.
Win.
What?
Win.
Well, they were going to eat it in the own way. Okay, I'll see you sheet number bets in a second. You're saying very good. Ari's is saying good. What? Kilo mafically. Get out. Why does he do with that? It's mashma the oil moed is traveling. For nasa oil moed, guys, the oil moed is traveling. So the man the says there's a psul yaitza. Why is the psul yaitza? Hahula the golem who dasa. It comes for the golem to tell me that it should be in the middle. Rabbi Geshem says she oil moed beemtzah the golem, that the oil moed should be in the middle of the golem. Bein degel Ruvain ledegel Ephraim. That's what it's giving us location. Not that the oil moed rod is intact, but for nas oil moed between the degel of Machne Ruvain and degel Machne Ephraim, that's where it should be. Okay, so now what exactly is the case over here? But I just keep on jumping on. Let me just finish off the idach, right? The other one is the one, guys, the one who uses the Vanasa oil moyed to teach me the oil moyed is traveling, has location. Then he learns up mimachna levim b'toicha machna in Afka. That it says machna mi b'toicha machna. So comes out the following. We know there's a machlokes in Rabbi Yochanan and Yeshua ben Levi. We don't know who says what. The shiler is what when the lechem upon him was off the shulchan, and you're traveling. What's the din? One says possible, one says not. On the shulchan, it's good. Exactly what the mitzias of the case is, let's look at Shita Mukubetzes Aleph. Shita Mukubetzes Aleph. Go down, the Ketzas Kasha, the Al Korchach b'Shabbos leinasu. They wouldn't travel on Shabbos. Guys, when did you take the lechem upon him off? On Shabbos, right? So you took the lechem upon him off on Shabbos, right? Now, they didn't travel on Shabbos. Mishum hoitzo u'mechamer. Because of the halachas of itzo u'mechamer. K'moshe kosu ha'taisus l'kamon. V'shema yesh leimar kigoin she'oisei Shabbos hoyu Yom Kippur. That Shabbos was Yom Kippur. She'lechem upon him. So in other words, guys, pshat. Guys, what's the kasha? If they didn't travel on Shabbos, they ate it already. They took it off on Shabbos, and they would go ahead and they would divide it between the mishmah coming in and coming out. If they didn't travel on Shabbos, what's your shaila? Guys, they ate it. You hear, guys? You hear? Guys, you hear? Everyone's hearing? Yeah. They're supposed to eat it on Shabbos. So your whole machloikis is misulik when it's off. And you're traveling. How do you have that mitzias? How do you have that mitzias of the case? Right? Because if it was Shabbos, you're going to eat it. Says Rabbeinu, says the Shita, Ken Zayin, you know what we're speaking about? Where Yom Kippur fell out on Shabbos. So you took it off, but you couldn't eat it. When would you eat it? At night. So night, they could travel already, you're going to see. In the middle, that's the case. That's the case. That would be your case. So it continues the shita. So I say Shabbos Yom Kippur. Shalechem upon him nechal erev b'moitzi Shabbos. V'yispeaku lechal esamat shenasu. And they didn't have time to go ahead until they travel. Guys, you hear the case. You need a little knech over here. You take it. You just. Oh, now in the shita test. If you look at the shita test, shenasu kuliyam alei pligi. The loy ifsel. Daksiv lechem aponim tamid. Ki pligi b'misulik. Shesolku b'Shabbos. V'sidru echad. And they put on another one. V'yispiku lechalei samachinasa. When they didn't have time to go until they traveled. So the chayra, that when they didn't have time till they traveled. So we have to see the mitzias of the case. So in other words, so right now we're good, guys. Right now we don't have a problem. We have a source for both one. We have a source for the one who says it's possible. We don't know who says what. We know it's Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel, Levi. We know it says what, and we have a source that what if it's Mesudar, v'lechem apanim tamid yiyeh, no machloikis. Machloikis is when you traveled. Is considered the oil moed traveling or not? Like the man the oil moed is intact, then you have psul yaitza. Like the man the that the oil moed is not intact and it's coming to this location, right between Degel Machna Fry and Degel Machna Ruvain, then what? Then you have psul yaitza. But it's off the shulchan. Meiside. B'shas siluk masois kochim nifsalim. When the masois would travel, b'shas siluk masois kochim would become puzzle. Your psul yaitza would be puzzle, right? Nifsalim b'yaitza. V'zavin u'mitzurayin mishtalchim chutz l'makitzasan. Now. Azov and Mitzayra, guys, we've been through this many times, right? The different machanois, who was sent out of all the machanois, this week's Parsha? The Mitzayra, right? Who sent out a machna Shrina and machna Levia? Who sent out of Shrina machna Levia? Is anyone who has what? Something come out of its body, right? Anyone has a tumor that comes out of the body, a shechvazera, a nida. Who sent out a Machna Levia, right? Machna Levia. No. So they're sent out a Machna Levia, and Kamei Mace is allowed in Machna Levia, right? And the rayos from Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe had Atzmas Yosef. Okay. So now, once they could not go, the Zavim and the Mitzrayim, they could not go into Machna Levia. So despite the fact that you're traveling, and despite the fact this is psul yaitza what of kachim, nonetheless vis-a-vis the halacha of the tishalech min hamachne, right? It's still intact. The kedusha is still intact. My love, when it says the kachim is psul yaitza, afilo lechem aponim. It would be even going on lechem aponim, and it would be a psul yaitza. Loi bami lechem aponim, right? Fred gemar manavshach. If the oil moed is dafka, that what? If oil moed is dafka, that it is an oil moed, then I feel the kachim nami should not be puzzle. If it's lav dafka, then I feel the oil moed, right, should not be puzzle. The oil moed lav dafka, then I feel lechem upon nami should be puzzle. In other words, where are you making this chilik? Now, the reason why it's puzzle is obviously because you're holding it's not the oil moed. The reason you're holding it's puzzle because obviously you're holding it's not the oil moed. Good. So the question is, so what's the difference between kachim and lechem upon him? Ella kiyasa Ravin, when Ravin showed up from Eretz Yisrael, Amar b'mesuder mar Amar b'mesuder Amar b'mesulik, right? V'lei pligi. They're not arguing at all. They're not arguing at all. They're not arguing. The oil moed is lav dafka. There's no oil moed, guys. There's no oil moed. Meaning it's psul yaitza. Machmas oil moed is psul yaitza. But if it's on the shulchan, good. If it's on the shulchan, it's good. If it's off the shulchan, it's no good. Guys, here, the way we're answering up is it has nothing to do whether it's oil moed or not oil moed. It has everything to do whether it's on the shulchan or not. The Bryce they've said that the lechem upon him. Kachim is no good. Why is kachim no good? Because the oil moed is no good, guys. Why is kachim pasul? Why is it psul yaitza? Because you don't have an oil moed. If that's the case, why is the lechem upon him good? Because it's on the shulchan. And we said the tamid yiyah. And the one who says it's no good is misulik, very kishmak. Okay, so it's not kash on the mandiyama that said that what? Yeah, psul yaitza. Yeah, very good. V'lei pligi. Rabbi Yishmamina. You see from the sugya, they said that kachim is pasul, right? We said kachim is pasul b'shul yaitza. Yesh silik masayis b'layla. They would go if the anan would go up at night, they would go and they would, right, and they wouldn't wait till the morning. They wouldn't wait till the morning, right? Because why? You have psul yaitza. You know what's the raya? Disal kedaitach ain't silik masois b'layla. They didn't travel at night. Amos madle. When would they travel? The Safra. So mayim mishum yaitza typically divsla belina. Fellas, once the kachim lays overnight, guys, you have psalina. Fellas, once kachim is left out overnight, you have psalina, right? Why is this puzzle? Because the yaitza, yeah. So it must be they traveled at night, and therefore it's puzzle because the oil moed is not intact. Because if they didn't travel at night, they traveled in the morning. Forget about yaitza. You have psalina. So it's a raya. They must have traveled at night. Shmaka raya. It must be a raya that they traveled at night. Because if they didn't travel at night, right? The lashon of Amos Madley, when they were the lashon of Madley to lift up the kloyim, they lift up the curtains that surrounded the Mishkan, guys. They lift up the curtains that surrounded the Mishkan. So now, again, in Bamidbar, it says the kalim were covered up, fellas. The kalim, they were special anartikim. They were special bags that they covered up, different colors, and that's yes, the kasha. How could you have the fire tumid all the time? You have it the big. The answer was it was capped. It was capped. I thought that it remained. Again, anyway. Yeah. Maya mishum yaitza tevev. So okay. Says the word pshita. It's pashut that they traveled at night. How do you know that? It says it went in front of him. The leches yomam v'layla. The anan went in front to travel day and night. Ksiv. You know when I would say they traveled at night? When they started during the day. So if they started during the day, they would continue to travel during the night. Right? If the day when they did not go ahead and be biyamama, I would think they don't initiate their traveling at night. Kamash Malon that they did. Kamash Malon they did. So Yaitza B'Reina, what do we have so far, fellas? We have Machlaikis. Is the Psul Yaitza B'Lechem Apanim, not Psul Lechem Apanim, when it's Mesulik. And that's totally in what? The Machlaikis, whether the oil made was intact or not. Right? That's the you cited the sugya so far. Okay. Meisive. Uriminu. I'll ask you a stira. You told me that what? That they sent out the Zavim and the Mitzrayim, right? They sent out the Zavim and Mitzrayim. You sent them out. Why? Because the Kedusha was intact. Hugloloi haparoichos. Guys, if you'd say Huglolo haparoiches, that would mean the paroiches that's in front of the oil moyed. When it says haparoichos, if you pronounce it that way, it means the curtains that surrounded the chutzner of the Mishkan, the curtains. That's the gersa. So Haglola Prochais, Hutru Hazovim Mitzrayim Likanis Lasham. There's your kasha, guys. There's your kasha. You just told me before that they were sent out. Here you see that not. They weren't sent out. Here you see that they were permitted. Some Ravashi like kasha, Ha Rebbe Eliezer HaRabbanon. Who could, according to Rebbe Eliezer, they were permitted to be in. According to Rebbe Eliezer, they were permitted to be in. HaRabbanon, the Rabbanon, according to Rabbanon, they were sent away. The Tanya, Amid Beis, the Tanya, Rebbe Eliezer Omer, Yachol Doichkai. And that's just speaking about the Korban Pesach that was brought to Tumah, fellas. We know that Roiv of the Tzibur was Tameh, that Tumah was Nitcha, that they were able to go ahead and the Tameh Mace, guys, Tameh Mace were able to go ahead and bring there into the Beis Hamikdash. So Rebbe Eliezer says, Yachol Doichkai Zav Mitzrayim v'nichlasu la'azara b'Pesach, haba b'Tumah, Yachol Yechayavim. I might think if those that are mechuyev to be sent out, right, sent out from the Azara, push their way in, they be chayiv tamaloima v'yishalchu min hamachne kol tzerua v'chol zav v'chol tamei lenefesh. So we lumped them all together, tzerua and zav and tamei lenefesh. So these are all tzerua is chutz the three machnois, zav is two machnois, and tamei meis is one machne. So b'shosh tamei lemeis mishtalchim zav mitzrayim mishtalchim. When are they sent out? When the tamei meis is sent out, then the zav mitzrayim is sent out. Ain't tamei meis mishtalachim, but if the tamei meis is not sent out, ain't zav mitzrayim mishtalachim. So the brisa that said that what? That they were sent away, that was the Rabbanan. And the one that said that it was muta, that's Rebbe Eliezer. Because Rebbe Eliezer says that just like the mitzrayim, just like the tamei meis were allowed in, so too what? The zav and mitzrayim were allowed in. Achas lechem, v'achas lechem aponim. Saida shtei lechem, the matit, the kipsi atzeres and shvuis, and the lechem upon him, week to week. The shasan, they're kneading, varichasan, and they're braiding, they're setting up the cedar, is bechutz. They were done outside the azara. They were done outside the azara. Vafiyasan bifnim, and they were baked inside. They were set up outside and baked inside the azara. Ve'enan doiches es haShabbos, and you have to bake it before Shabbos. You have to bake it before. It's not doiches Shabbos. Okay, the baking is not doiches Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, kol ma'aseyem bifnim. Says Rabbi Yehuda, everything was done inside. Sai the lisha and the aricha was done inside, and certainly the baking. Rabbi Shimon Omer lo'olam havi rogel loymar lo'olam. I was rugged to say shtei alechem v'lechem aponim ksher rois ba'azaro ksher is beis pagi. Beis pagi is outside you. Is the last place where you can eat ma'aser sheni, according to one opinion, right? Or sometimes it's right outside the azara machlokes. But either way, you have a 3-year machlokes. Guys, outside. Like Tanakama, the cedar is outside, the baking's inside. Like Rabbi Yehuda, beside the cedar, inside the baking is inside. Like Rabbi Shimon, both outside. You can't have a bigger machlokes to that, right? The Tanakama is a pshara between Rabbi Yehuda and is a pshara between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia. So how gufa kasha? This is innately shver. Amit lishosam barichosam b'chutz. You said that the kneading of it and the aricha of it was done outside. Alma midas yavesh leiniskatsha. So you see that the midas yavesh, meaning the kli that was used to measure it, wasn't kodesh because it was outside the azara. V'afiyosam b'fnim alma midas yavesh niskatsha. Now the havamina is it got its kedusha before it got in the oven. That it got its kedusha in the kli before the oven. So it got it was infused with kedusha saguf before it got into the oven. So you have a steer minei ubei. You're telling me outside the kli sharis wasn't magdish, inside it was. So Amar Rabba says Rabba, or it could be Rava. Amar Rava, Huksha Adam Kasha Shu Kasha Kebarzel. This question was posed by a person who is Kasha Kebarzel. Let's see Rashi, guys. Huksha B'tiret Zu, Adam Kasha Chacham U'Mechudid, a person that is very smart and sharp. Lachatech Halacha Kebarzel, to cut Halacha Kebarzel, right? The yes is Kasha. Okay, so what was the kasha? It's a stira, right? Well, let's see Tosfos here. Shukasha kebazel shvachu. This is a shvacha tamidei chachamim kidama perakam b'ainis kol talmid chacham she'ena kasha kebazel in talmid chacham. Any talmid chacham is that kasha kebazel is the talmid chacham. In other words, Rava was very impressed with this kasha. Fred the Gemara wasn't so impressed. Umani, who's this person that's kasha kebazel? It's Rav Sheshes. Fred the Gemara, my kasha, what's the kasha? Dilmi sorin le magdish, tarna mekadesh. In other words, you're saying that the klisharis outside doesn't work and inside it does. Maybe it's not the klisharis. Maybe it's not the klisharis that gives us kedusha zaguf. Maybe it's the oven. So outside, in chinami, a kli amidas yavesh never gives its kedusha. The kedusha over here is coming machmas the oven. Ela ikashi, you want a kasha? Ha kasha. Here's a kasha. Va'afiyasa bifnim. Now, when did you go ahead and bake it? Erev Shabbos. Alma Tana Mekadesh. Good? Tana Mekadesh. Now, once it gets Kedusha, what happens when it comes nightfall? Lina. The Ein Doiches Es Shabbos. It's not Doiches Shabbos. That means you're doing it Erev Shabbos. So, L'chaira, what's the din? If still Belina. It should be what? It should be possible Belina. No, you're telling me you bake it with the oven's going to give its Kedusha. Now you have a Kedusha Saguf problem with Lina. So Amar Rava on that kasha said Rava, Huksha Adam Kasha Shu Kasha Kabarzel, Aman Rav Sheshes. Amar Rashi Maku Kusha. What's the kasha? Dilma Mai Bifnim. When it says Bifnim, it doesn't mamish mean Bifnim. It means B'mokim Zrizim. Now the Bifnim is usually where the Kahanim hang out. Because the Kahanim is Zrizim hain. So these are going to be Zrizim. They're going to be very Zrizim to make sure that it doesn't become Chometz. They ask the kasha the lechem is chametz. So they say the teretz is the zoris that it should become chametz. They used to not being chametz. Anyways, the kasha is not in the azora, guys. It's not in the azora. We're saying makam ifnim because of the kahanim who work bifnim, but einachinami they're doing the avoid outside, and it's not a kasha. That's what Rav Ashi wants to get teretz. However, Voda Rav Ashi Brusi. Ashi is a Brusi, it's an outside, meaning it's not doesn't hold up. Manav Shach. Iafia be'inins reason, lisha richanam be'inins reason. If baking, you're saying baking is bifnim, so what's the difference between baking and lisha varicha? The lisha varicha loy be'inins reason, mafia nami loy be'inins reason. You can't go ahead and in other words, once they avoid it, it's no chilik between the two. Elder Rav Ashi Brusi, and the question remains. And guys, and the question it's taka good kasha. Question remains: how in the world do you go ahead and have what? You have it's magdish biyoim. It's you're baking it erev Shabbos. You know, a problem of lina. That's a problem. Rav Yehuda says, "Kol ma'aseh mifnim." Okay, guys, outside. A little story time. Story time. We're familiar with the haftarah of Macha Chodesh. What happened? That Shaul was waiting. He had a Sudas Rosh Chodesh, and the first day David did not show up. This is after Shaul tried to kill him, and he didn't show up. And the second day he didn't show up. He thought the first day maybe he was Tameh and he was Makbet Chulin B'Taira. Anyway, he didn't show up. He got angry at Yehonasan. He throws a spear. Yehonasan leaves, and he meets David in the field. Yehonasan did not bring David any food, and that fact that he didn't bring him Seder L'Derech put into effect a tremendous calamity. What happened was David ran to Novir Kahanim, and Achimatz, who was the Kohen Gadol, saw David. He was astounded, and and David was starving. He was suffering from bulmus. He was mamas pekuach nefesh, and he talked David. David told him, "I have to eat something," and he said, "This is lachem aponim." And we're going to see the dialogue exactly. And David said, "I could eat it. I'm a pekuach nefesh." Achimatz gives him the food, and Doeg was there. And Doeg then went and told Shaul what happened. And then as a result, Shaul comes and he tells Doeg, and they wipe out Novir Kahanim, all because of this incident. Okay, but we're going to focus on the conversation that takes place between David and Achimatz. Okay, the conversation takes place. Both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon get their shitas from here. Guys, what's Rabbi Yehuda's shita? Everything's done inside. And what's Rabbi Shimon's shita? Everything is done outside. Good. Amar Ravo Bar Kahana, Ushneim, both Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon Mikra Echad Darshu. They both get their halachas from the same pasuk. For who derech chayil, and David says to Achimatz, first of all, it's derech chayil. Afki yam gikdash bekli, and even today was kodesh bekli. Okay, I would be able to eat it. Rabbi Yehuda Savar. The ka'afalei. David found it. When did he bake it? He baked it during the day. He baked it Friday. Amalahu. David said to him, "Derech chol ka'afisu lei. You're going ahead what? And baking it during the day? Afki ayom yigdash bekli ifsalei belina. Right? It'd be possible lina. So Rashi says, Afki ayom yigdash bekli hatanur ifsalei lemacha belina al matana migdash v'deicha Shabbos." Right? We said that what? So he says that after Yom Yigdash B'Kli, in other words, you would be able to go right. You would be Deicha Shabbos. In other words, don't bake it today. Bake it on Shabbos. Bake it on Shabbos. You could bake it on Shabbos. Why? Because the Kli will be magdash it, and it's okay. You can't bake it today because it'll become lina. So bake it on Shabbos. That's where you got it from. So David found it Achimatz baking it on Erev Shabbos, and he said it's going to be psulina. Bake it on Shabbos. So what do you see? That he hold that it could be done inside because bifnim is inside. Rav Shimon Sava b'Shabbos ashkechinu. David showed up on Shabbos, and he found the Shabbos to ka'afulei. He was baking it on Shabbos. Amalahu loy derech chol be'isay lemevda midi tana migdash shulchan hud mekadesh. Why do you have to bake it on Shabbos? Bake it on Friday. You're going to wait psulina. It's not going to get puzzle from the oven. It's only gets its kedusha when it's on the shulchan. So you don't have to go ahead and bake it on Shabbos. In other words, in both cases, Sai Reb Yehuda and Sai Reb Shimon, David's giving musa to Achimatz. Like Reb Yehuda, he's giving him musa for baking it on Friday, and Rabbi Shimon, he's giving musa for baking it on Shabbos. Like Reb Shimon, since it's done outside, and since there's no kedusha, you don't have psulina. When's it going to get kedusha? When it's on a shulchan on Shabbos. So don't bake it on Shabbos. Loi Rav Yehuda, you can't bake it Erev Shabbos. Why? Because it's going to get its kedusha, and you have Selina. So therefore, you have to bake it on Shabbos. So it has to be inside. Good. Fred the Gemara. Umi matzas amit the b'shas afi ashkechinu. How could Sai Reb Yehuda and Sai Reb Shimon say it's speaking at the time of baking? V'kasiv vayitin le'akoyin kodesh. He gave it to him. Ki le'hoyu shom lechem. He did not have any lechem. Ki and lechem upon him hamoisrim lifnei Hashem. In other words, he had this had been taken off. It was the lechem upon him that was in front of Hashem, and it was taken off already. So it wasn't b'shas afiyah. It was already on the shulchan all the week. It was on already, and it was taken off. So both Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda cannot possibly go ahead and darshan this pasuk this way. So the drasha is like I told you, as we're going to see now. Elamai derech chayil dika amilahu. What did it mean derech chayil? Hachi kamarlei. This is what they lecha lechem. There's not lechem ki and lechem upon him. Amasurim l'fnei Hashem. All we have is lechem upon him. Amalahu loimi boy hai. The kivin and nafik me'ila derech chayil. First of all, once it did its mitzvah and you took it off, there's no din me'ila anymore. It's derech chayil, meaning you can mishtamish with it, you can eat it. El afilu heich nami diyam yigdish b'kli. Even if it was on the shulchan, havali, you'll be able to give it to me. The leichel, that I should be able to eat it. Why? Because misukin hu. I'm misukin. Guys, geschmack is anything, right? David's telling him, first of all, it's derech chayil. And second of all, even if it was derech, to take it off, I'm dying of bulmus. So Memela, it's a nice story, but the bottom line is we don't have the svara of the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda that everything's done inside, and Reb Shimon that everything's done outside. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Shimon, big Gemara completely. They argue in svara, right? They argue in svara. Rashi. Why do they argue? Big Gemara completely. Mar Gamolei mi Rabbi. One had a Masorah from his Rebbe, the Tana Magdish. Rabbi Yehuda says the Tana made it Kodesh. Umar and Reb Shimon Gamolei Gama Deloi Magdish. And Reb Shimon said Lat. And again, fellas, if this Tana is Magdish, you have to bake it on Shabbos because you have the Psalolina, and therefore it had to be done inside. If the Tana is not Magdish and the Shulchan is Magdish, then you do it on Friday outside. And that was the Masorah that each one had from his Rebbe. That was the Masorah that each one from his Rebbe. It's not a pasuk, Masorah from his Rebbe. Dekanami, Diktani Reb Shimon Aimel Oilam Havi Ragel Loimar. He was accustomed to say, what was he saying? The Messiah at Kahat from Rebbe. He said the Messiah that he had from his Rebbe. Shtei Alechem V'Lechem upon him Ksheris Ba'Zara Ukesheris Abeis Pagi. What's he saying over? What he heard from his Rebbe. That's the lashon of the Mishnah. Shma Mina that they're arguing Messiah. They're not arguing what in the pasuk. I do have a phone.